What is ethnography? Ethnography, also referred to as the science of peoples, is understood as the systematic study of people and cultures, especially through the observation of their cultural and social practices. More than a science in itself, it is usually considered a branch of social anthropology, if not a research tool or method. Ethnography was widely used in the analysis of aboriginal communities during the 20th century and is currently applied to the study of any form of social group. This is due to the fact that as a method of obtaining information it is far superior to its alternatives, since it allows obtaining live information, direct from the source and of a very varied nature. It should not be confused with ethnology, another discipline from which it differs in its fundamental approach to the subject. History of ethnography. Ethnography was practiced in ancient times, when observations and descriptions of peoples, especially those considered barbaric or exotic, were transmitted by the centers of power, usually powerful empires that considered themselves the center of the world. The same thing happened with colonialist Europe, whose expansion began in the 15th century and continued until the 19th, exploring the entire planet and taking note of the populations it encountered. Formally, ethnography begins together with social anthropology, as heir to said European interest in the exotic and distant world of the East, particularly, or of the surviving American aboriginal cultures. Its father and founder is the same of social anthropology, Bronislav Malinowski. However, it would be with the turn within anthropology, which allowed a more pluralistic vision of societies, together with the development of other social sciences such as linguistics, psychology and sociology, that it would be constituted as a scientific discipline, and that a necessary debate regarding its nature could take place. Definition of ethnography. Ethnography studies the human being and the societies in which it is organized. Traditionally, ethnography involved the written description of the way of life of a specific society or human group. It is part of the so-called human sciences or social sciences, since its object of study is the human being and the societies it organizes, but it does so from the presence of the observer himself within them. Seen in this way, any exercise in social anthropology is based on the compilation, comparison, and analysis of own or third-party ethnographic experiences. Objective of the ethnography. Ethnography aims to make an objective description of the dynamics, structures and processes that occur within a given human group. This in order to build an own object of study, compiling and interpreting the data obtained. Whoever exercises it fulfills the role of observer, but also of analyst, in the sense that they must compare what is observed with something for it to make sense. That something is the very structures, processes and dynamics of the society from which it comes. Advantages of ethnography. Only being within a human group can the social reality be faithfully described. The informative wealth is undoubtedly the robust side of ethnography, since its studies yield much more information than could be obtained through documentary sources or other types of research. This is based on the assumption that only by being within a human group can the social and cultural reality of what happens be faithfully referred to and described. This implies that it is a qualitative and not a quantitative science, since it is interested in interpreting what happens and not for throwing statistical data that reflect it. Limitations of ethnography. Ethnography has a weak side, and that is that it is only useful in the face of small communities, whose behavior and structure can be encompassed with relative ease. Furthermore, it depends on the researcher's ability to penetrate these communities and gain their trust, giving them access to practices and discourses that a foreigner would not normally appreciate. Likewise, the presence of the observer in the studied community implies that their subjectivities, prejudices, and experiences can easily sneak into their ethnographic descriptions, or they can predispose the studied community so that it does not act naturally. Therefore, objectivity will always be a present theme among the limitations of ethnography. Types of ethnography. Two fundamental types of ethnographic approach are traditionally distinguished. Macroethnography. It starts from the study of individual behavior, of small-scale dynamics, to try to draw conclusions about the human group as a whole from there. Microethnography. It goes the other way, starting from the broader questions of the group to try to understand individual behaviors, or to try to verify them in personal stories. How to make an ethnography. It is necessary to analyze and draw conclusions from the information obtained. All ethnography is carried out through three fundamental steps. Observation. It is about having the five senses to capture as much information as possible in the social framework to be investigated, without disregarding any type of data or experiences. Description. The recomposition of what is observed in a document, written, visual, sound, that serves as support and allows its revision, correction, and transmission. Analysis. The information obtained and recorded must be collated, compared, understood, and relevant conclusions drawn from it, both on a small and large scale. Life stories. One of the most common tools available to ethnography are life stories. Subjective vital accounts obtained through a face-to-face interview between the scholar and the subject to be studied, in which they are induced to recount their life and provide information. More details about it, such as their own beliefs, values, myths, religious practices, etc. From this type of profiles, similar to the psychological ones, documents are created that serve as ethnographic sources for later studies. Bronislav Malinowski. Bronislav Malinowski gained field experiences in aboriginal communities. Born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1884 and died in 1942 in the USA, he is considered the founding father of British social anthropology. He completely renewed this field of study based on a functional consideration of culture, hand in hand with psychoanalysis, and his own field experiences in numerous aboriginal communities in Melanesia and Papua New Guinea. One of his famous essays is his introduction to the famous book by Fernando Ortiz, Cuban Counterpoint of Tobacco and Sugar, 1940. Differences between ethnography and ethnology. Although they sound similar, these two disciplines differ at their roots. While ethnography implies a field study, an in situ investigation of a culture or a social group, ethnology, on the other hand, consists of the collation or comparison between two documented and contemporary cultures. In fact, ethnology can also be ethnohistory, when it deals with the temporal comparison of cultures or societies.